Hello and welcome to season 3, episode 1 of the HONESTea. I am so grateful to be here and so excited to bring another season of, what is my passion and my joy to you all. My name is Angela Malakai, and I am spilling all of the HONESTea this season around, authenticity and what it takes to be authentic. And I think a lot of times we talk about authenticity, and we even have a lot of people who will say, we almost use it as a weapon. I hear a lot of people who will say, oh, I am so honest and I'm so authentic, and if you don't like that, well, then that's on you. And so it gives us permission. In some cases, we use it like a weapon to say, well, that's your fault. Like I'm just me. I'm just fully me and fully authentic. And we use it as a permission piece to be unkind sometimes. And we talk about it from a place of, that you need to be courageous to be authentic. And I absolutely 100% believe that's true. And I want to talk about today, what is the cost of being inauthentic? What's the cost to you and to the people that are in your world when you are not authentic? And so what I truly believe is that we are in a position where we have the ability to lead our own lives first. And when we become really good leaders of ourselves in our own lives, then we can become really good leaders in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces. And it all starts with you, your ability to be authentic, to turn up as a good leader in your life. And there's many components to that, but let's talk about authenticity and the cost of turning up with the mask, with the fakeness and just not being yourself. And I don't want to put any judgment around that either, because, a lot of times people don't even know that they are wearing a mask. A lot of times we've been conditioned in such a way to believe that the person that we're turning up as is actually our authentic selves. And a lot of times I will deal with a lot of people who will, when I say, who are you? I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a brother, I'm a cousin, I'm a manager, I'm a Christian, I'm all of these things. And then when I ask them to take that away, well, if you weren't a sister, who would you be? If you weren't a carer, who would you be? If you weren't a manager, who would you be? Then they find it incredibly difficult to answer that question. And I know that I have been in that same place. And so I want to talk about all of that today. So ultimately, what I see and what I have seen is that when we choose to turn up in the mask, and a lot of times, like I said, we don't even know we're choosing it, because we've been conditioned to believe that those labels that we put in ourselves are us, that we are the label, right? And then that's what happens when, if suddenly I'm not someone's mother, then who am I? Or suddenly I'm not a manager, then who am I? And that's where we can get really lost. I know that I've been in a place myself. One of my most darkest times in my life was, when I actually had, I had built a really incredible corporate career. I had my own home. It was a beautiful home by the beach, beautiful family, all the things, right down to the white picket fence and the 2 dogs. I might have heard me say that before. And didn't even realize that the reason why I was so exhausted, the reason why I was so overwhelmed, the reason why I was so defeated in other aspects of my life was because I wasn't fully myself. And at one time I had really sat at the beach by myself at night, exhausted, in depletion, overwhelmed, having just finished a huge argument over just the same old crap, and thinking, like actually considering throwing myself in the ocean. And what I realize now is I don't even know who I would have been throwing in the ocean. I don't know who that was. I didn't know who I was. I was so in the roles, I was so playing the role and not even realizing how inauthentically I was showing up for myself and for other people. And so I want to say this without judgment. I want you not to put some judgment, any judgment around it, because what we also know, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, we want to be, that's part of confirmation bias as well, is that we want to, we seek out in others things that we seek in ourselves, and that likeness, to be accepted, to be liked, to be part of something, means that we look for those things. And so I really don't want you to put any judgment around that for yourself and for other people, because sometimes we're wearing a mask and we're being unauthentic because maybe we don't even realize it, or maybe we do realize it and we're doing it because we want to be accepted. And I see this a lot of times where, say, for example, somebody has gotten a promotion into a role and they've been part of a peer group, and now they are in a leadership role, and they're like navigating that place of, well, I was really good at my job, and so I got a promotion, but I don't know how to be a leader of people. And all I know is I still want to be really liked by these people because they're my peers. They were my peers. Maybe I already have a relationship with them, and I'm still trying to be, be liked by them, right? And there's a difference between being liked and being respected, and I think that is where a lot of leaders come unstuck. And even in our homes, right? We want our kids to like us. We want our kids to like us, not just love us, but like us, like who we are. And so I see this a lot with adult children, where adult children have come from, especially this generation, they're pretty woke and they realize that they've been hard done by their parents. But then what happens is that, as we see a lot of parents who are saying, well, I've done you wrong, like I get that. And then we've got children who are being incredibly disrespectful and not honoring their parents, understanding that their parents came from wounds. They were also wounded when they were trying to parent them. And yes, they're taking responsibility for that, but then their children are now in a place where they're not necessarily treating their parents well. And all of this stuff is around our ability to turn up authentically. And you're probably like, what? I don't get it. So just to help you to understand, if you haven't seen this before, I talk a lot of, I've spoken before about your ego, which is not to be judged. It's your protective personality. It's the part of you that keeps you safe and keeps you and helps you to navigate the world and all of those things. But it doesn't want you to be happy. It doesn't care. It's not that it doesn't want you to be, but it's not there to have you happy and fulfilled and living your best life, right? And so that personality, that protective personality, that ego turns up, whether that's in the superior. So, and that's where a lot of people think we speak of that often, like, oh, they've got such a big ego, and we think it's the superior, the authoritative sort of person who shows up and they have full of bravado and thinking that they know it all. And we've all had leaders like that, right? And we might have had a parent like that, and we might see those people in our community, and we might see those people, in lots of places. We might see that person in ourselves. I've definitely been that kind of leader before, especially when I was a new leader. I really, really kind of wanted to prove, that I had that position for her, and I'm going to go in, kind of, and that was my model of leaders when I was coming up. Not all, but some of my leaders were, kind of ruled with an iron fist, and I thought that I had to be a bit like that. So sometimes I was like, I've been in previous roles where I felt like I've been a bit like that. And then there's the inferior. There's the part of us that is, what I've been talking about in terms of, we're in our peer group, and then suddenly we become a leader, and now it's like, oh, I might minimize myself. And even though I think perhaps I something's not right, that I'm not going to admit that, and I'm going to kind of go along to get along because I want to be liked as a manager. I might even do things like I'll do more than my job, right? I'll do all that I used to do, and I will also be the leader. And so then I become exhausted because I'm actually not delegating tasks because I want to be liked and I want to be appreciated. And I don't understand that there's a difference, and that actually what I really want is to be respected and trusted. And then that leads into all of the rest of that. So what happens is that we turn up in these masks because we want to be liked, we want to be accepted, we want to be trusted, but it's the inauthentic version of us. And then what happens is we end up in exhaustion, depletion. And what I see a lot, especially in the workplace, is that we've got people who are just, I don't know how many times I've heard, I come home from work and all I want to do is get in my pajamas and I'm just exhausted, right? And I just want to watch mindless TV because I'm just shattered. But at the same time, we've still got, we've still got to cook dinner. We've still got to get kids to trainings, and we've still got to get ourselves to the gym, and we've still got to, turn up at network meetings or whatever it is. There's still things that need to be achieved and accomplished, and we're exhausted because we've been showing up in this way that maybe wasn't our authentic selves. And so I really want to lean into that to help you to understand that there is a place where you can be fulfilled and live in your authenticity. And sometimes it's going to take a little bit of digging, maybe even, to find out, who am I without all of those labels? The other labels we use are sort of around, a lot of time. I hear this a lot now, right? That people are on the spectrum, or they've got ADHD, and we use it as permission to behave in a way, right? And also as a barrier between us and something else, or as an excuse. So we will use even our dis-ease as an excuse. And I'm not saying, but it's like it gives us belonging. So when I say, oh, I'm part of the, I'm on the spectrum, for example. So that gives me belonging with all of the people who are on the spectrum, which, if I'm honest with you, I've if you don't know this about me, I was adopted, and my biological father had Asperger's. I found that out a few years ago, and suddenly I realized all my quirky weirdness, there's a lot of it, was probably because I was on the spectrum. And when I started to tell people in my life about it, people that I love that have been in my life for a long time, and I was like, you know what, I think I might be on the spectrum, and they were like, yeah, like no one was surprised except me, I think. And so I'm not taking that away from you or saying that it's not okay to say it. What I'm saying is, if you use it as a mask, if you use it as a permission to, I often hear people who will say, oh no, but Ange, that's because I'm on the spectrum, or oh, that's because I have ADHD, oh, that's because I am gluten intolerant. Oh, that's because, when it becomes part of your identity, then it can become an issue, because it gives you permission, right, to be inauthentic, to not be and discover who you are without all of the labels, without all of the things. Who are you? Who are you? Who is Ange? What do I stand for? What are my values? What are the things that make me me, without the labels? Who would I be? And it's a really like big discussion, and so I would encourage you, because the cost of not being authentic in your relationships, right? So I've been so guilty of this, where and this is not my husband's fault, but where I have minimized myself and accepted things for myself that I really didn't want to do, or where I've kind of expected him to read between the lines. I know a lot of us do that. We expect mind readers, or we become mind readers. We think we can read other people's minds, and we are reading between the lines. Or in our relationships with our children, and our relationships with our friends, with our family members, with our, in our workspaces, in our leadership roles, all of those things. If we don't truly know who we are authentically, it can lead to overwhelm, exhaustion, frustration, even regret for sure. And that's why you are so tired, because you're tired. I'm tired of not being me. That's what it really boils down to. And, and absolutely resentment. Resentment. We start to resent people, and we don't know why. You're so resentful because you've decided to minimize yourself in situations. You've decided not to use your voice to empower others, and not to use your voice to empower yourself. You've not taken ownership of who you are and how you speak, and your wounds and what's going on for you. You're tolerating more than you should, or you are turning up in an energy that you're not happy with, or you're tolerating other people's energy that you really are not happy with either. And so that's when you're not able to, especially if you're in a leadership position, which all of you are. Absolutely. Somewhere in your life you're in a leadership position, even if it's like with a friend of yours. Normally you have the ability, right, to lead in that space, but a lot of times we don't. We get into our inferior ego, and so we don't lead. But you have the ability to lead all the time, to make choices for yourself, to be empowered and make choices for yourself. Absolutely you do. You just choose not to. You just choose not to. But you have the ability to become the leader of your life, and to choose the energy that you surround yourself with, and to be authentic, because otherwise the cost is way too much. And so, this is what everything I ask you to do, it's always just comes from a place of you absolutely up to you whether you do it or not. It's you don't have to. But what I would do, and what I ask people to do, is you can pray on it, you can meditate on it, you can journal about it, but just ask yourself, first of all, write a list of all the things that you are, that you believe you are now. And you'll probably say, a father, a son, a brother, a cousin, a manager, a football coach, a pottery maker, I don't know, whatever it is, a podcaster. And then ask yourself, if I crossed all of the things off that list, then who would I be? Who am I without those things? What do I believe in? What do I value? What are the things that really matter to me? And then ask yourself, are you turning up in those values and in the things that matter and being really authentically you? And then you'll start to see why you feel burnout and the spaces in which you might be more authentic in some and less in others. You might recognize things like, oh my gosh, I did not even realize that I was wearing that mask in that space because I so want to be accepted and loved in that place. And I want people to see me as having authority. And I'm relying on, sometimes we're relying on our title to give us authority, right? Or rather than utilizing our inner authority. Because remember, the whole world is just a mirror. It's a reflection of how you are and what you believe on the inside. So when you start to trust and believe in your own authenticity, your ability to be respected, trusted, loved, honored, cherished, held from your place of authenticity, from you, when you do that for yourself, the world is going to reflect that back to you. When you don't do that, that's when you end up in exhaustion and depletion. So I hope that all makes sense. I have, taken up so much of your time. I'm honored to have you here. And as always, I'm going to leave you with this one last thought. My hope, my prayer, my wish for you always is that you will heal deeply and lead boldly and live fully. And I just so appreciate you and I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Mwah.